Were you surprised by this, or is this just more of the same?
I mean, it is interesting to see. This is the first back-to-back monthly decline since mid-2022. So we've actually had, for some time we had a real sustained period of growth for the industry. I think what's maybe surprising looking into these numbers, one of the sort of trouble points the last few months have been battery electric vehicles. We actually had a relatively solid month, I'm happy to report, for September, where roughly 14% gain for the industry, which is pretty solid. But what we did see was just some weakness in the rest of the industry, and we've now just seen a sort of fairly consistent up and down nature to overall sales, to where we're now only up for the year 1% through the first 9 months of 2024.
Is it priced in? You got GM this week, you got Tesla this week, you got Mercedes this week. We've already had some pretty grim numbers coming out of other European autos. Are the US automakers in a different place than European automakers, or is this a global phenomenon?
I think maybe the global phenomenon for these international companies that is very consistent is the weakness in China. I think that's going to be very interesting to hear from GM later today. We've seen that consistently across the Germans. Even Tesla, I think, is maybe holding up better than some of these other companies, but isn't by any means sort of seeing the growth from China that they did in the past. And so, to the extent that they're having growth issues, it is, they're also part of this trend as well. That Tesla, was absolutely, growing like gangbusters there a few years ago. And even, on an export basis, the Shanghai plant is sort of tapped out, and they're not looking to expand manufacturing in that country.
So we'll watch the China dynamic very closely for these global players. What about the way that policy is helping or not helping in Europe? Because we saw EV sales drop off in places where there had been support from governments, and then that was removed. Now there's talk of support coming back in Germany, and you wonder whether that's causing some people to pause and not buy.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thought. I do think that what we're also probably seeing is some holding back even by the manufacturers as we close out the year, because they need to hit higher CO2 emissions targets for next year. So why rush your EVs out before the end of this year when you really need them in 2025? I think the other question in terms of policy-wise is I suspect we're going to hear a lot of conversations on earnings calls for the European companies about tariffs, right, with Donald Trump talking about, tariffs being the most beautiful word, his favorite word. That was a big point of emphasis, obviously, in the first Trump administration, and the potential for that to be a big risk for these companies is absolutely, I think, on a lot of investors' minds. Tingle.